We dedicate this program in loving memory to Rabbi Solomon Schiff, one of the driving forces in the building of Miami's Jewish community, a founding member of the Holocaust Memorial Committee Miami Beach, a dedicated teacher, inspirational leader, and friend. May his memory forever be a blessing. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. While we cannot be together in person tonight due to the pandemic, we gather virtually for a community observance of Yom HaShoah, paying tribute to the victims of the Holocaust and honoring the survivors. This Yom HaShoah observance is brought to you by the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach, a committee of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. Our program begins now with Cantor Lisa Siegel of Temple Beth Shalom.
True, this history has no words, yet we know that it has to be spoken. We gather for memory, to lift up the lives that were broken, those gone too soon. We bring into this room to say to the world they were here, a promise we'll keep every year. Too many names to name, numbers too hard to handle, but we can at least light a yellow candle on Yom HaShoah. Family trees cut down, horror too hard to handle, but we hold that light in a yellow candle on Yom HaShoah, on Yom HaShoah, on Yom HaShoah.
Thank you, Cantor Lisa Siegel of Temple Beth Shalom, for that beautiful opening song. Good evening. I'm Jessica Katz, a third-generation survivor and a proud member of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach Committee. It is my honor and my privilege to serve as chair of tonight's virtual Yom HaShoah commemoration. I welcome you all. Although the ongoing pandemic prevents us from observing our usual tradition of safely assembling at the Holocaust Memorial, we are gathered together virtually on this solemn occasion to mourn the murder of 6 million Jewish victims during the Shoah, to share our sadness and to honor our survivors who are here with us this evening. These were men, women, and children whose only offense was being Jewish. Our innocent people were savagely murdered by a German regime that demonized them and sought to destroy not only Jewish lives, but all traces of Jewish life. Anti-Semitism, history's oldest hatred, propelled Nazi Germany's ruthless assault on the Jewish people. Although the Nazis were ultimately defeated, we are now painfully aware that World War II did not mark the end of anti-Semitism. The false myths and outright lies that advance the senseless hatred of Jews are current in today's alarming headlines and social media posts. These falsehoods and hate crimes persist in rising numbers throughout the world and right here in the United States. We ignore them at our own peril. So tonight, while we grieve for those who perished in the Shoah, we must also unite in a common determination to prevent a repeat of this most tragic period in modern history. We commit ourselves to standing up to anti-Semitism, bigotry, and discrimination in all their forms, and we pledge to continue teaching the lessons of the Holocaust to all people. That is the highest purpose of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach, and it is why we come together, albeit virtually, this evening.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Sidney Pertnoy, and I have the honor of serving as chair of the board of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach, a committee of the Greater Miami Jewish Federation. This Holocaust Memorial was the vision of a group of dedicated founders who understood the importance of building a memorial in Miami Beach to the 6 million Jews who perished at the hands of the Nazis. In 1984, this small group of Holocaust survivors and Jewish community leaders joined together to create a spiritual resting place for the victims of the Holocaust, most of whom were slaughtered without the dignity of proper burial. The founders sought to build an expressive, evocative destination, a holy place where mourners and survivors could gather in dignity and contemplation. They also envisioned a physically towering community presence that would become the centerpiece of Holocaust education in Miami and beyond, and a place where the community could gather in solidarity as the times demand. Today, with the help of the Memorial Board, the Federation, countless survivors, docents, and volunteers, and the continued leadership of many of the original founders, the memorial endures and stands as living testimony to the genius and foresight of its creators. Nearly 100,000 visitors each year experience the profound sorrow and gain new understanding of the Shoah as they walk through the memorial grounds. Survivors take an active role as docents and speakers, finding comfort in the company of their peers and bravely sharing their heart-rending stories with countless school groups from all parts of the community. Meanwhile, children and adults learn about the tragic history, cultural loss, and ethical significance of the Holocaust through classes and programs organized by the memorial staff in public, private schools, and religious institutions and other organizations in South Florida and throughout the state. We owe a tremendous debt of gratitude and appreciation to the founders of the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach for their vision and their foresight in building one of the most important, meaningful, and compelling landmarks in our Jewish community. Please watch this short edited film about the creation of the memorial, and as you do, I encourage you to contemplate the uncomfortable reality that its relevance today is sadly every bit as timely and urgent as ever.
We looked at the memorial basically as a cemetery, which is essentially what it is. There are no graves for those individuals' names who are engraved in that memorial. It's their place of rest.
I was first contacted by Abe Resnick, who was then a Miami Beach commissioner.
Abe Resnick was a Holocaust survivor who had been advocating for the creation of a memorial in Miami Beach. He sought the help of others, including Norman Brayman.
That was Norman Brayman that carried the prestige and the weight and the responsibilities, and he was a wonderful leader.
We had a number of survivors and a number of those that were Americans, and each of the members contributed a sum of money.
The location was predetermined because the city of Miami Beach, through Abe Resnick's efforts, allocated this piece of land to us, literally gave it to us, and all of us deemed that to be a very, very good location.
But some in the community were opposed to the creation of the memorial.
A lot of people were against having the Memorial Miami Beach because they felt Miami Beach is a place of sun and fun, and the Holocaust Memorial is a downer. I spoke to a number of commissioners and said, do you know the legal address of the memorial? And they said no. I said the legal address is 1933-1945 Meridian Avenue. Obviously the dates of the Nazi period. And so there's no more appropriate place in the world than here.
The committee persevered. Architect Kenneth Treister was given the daunting task of envisioning a memorial that would honor the memory of those lost in the Holocaust.
I wanted a place where a survivor could come and think about their family. So I wanted a beautiful park.
Within that environment, he further created an educational and emotional experience for other visitors.
The park is part of the setting. The photographs are part of the story. The sculpture is the emotion.
The centerpiece of the memorial was a sculpture of love and anguish. Dr. Helen Fagan, a survivor and Holocaust scholar at the University of Miami, would author the text engraved on the walls beside historical photographs. The sculptures that would populate the memorial were cast at a foundry in Mexico City, where Treister and a team of 45 artisans worked tirelessly for 3 years to bring the memorial's iconic centerpiece to life. Abe Resnick traveled to the foundry to witness the process and accompanied the finished arm on its long journey back to its new home in Miami Beach. Passionately devoted, Resnick slept at the memorial site to protect the precious bronze statue from theft. On February 4th, 1990, with many survivors from the region in attendance, the memorial opened to the public.
The memorial has deep feelings. Tourists come to see it from all over the world. They come because of the meaningful remembrance that it is.
The privilege of having my family's names inscribed on the wall, on tablet 1. I stand there and I talk to them.
I think it's a holy place. I look at it as just a holy place.
As the film points out, a primary mission of the memorial is to ensure that the legacy of the Holocaust is never forgotten or diminished. To accomplish that mission, the memorial conducts active educational programs to teach the next generation about the truths and lessons of the Shoah and to educate about the dangers of unchecked hatred of all forms. Let's hear from some of those students now, members of our Ambassador and Young Lions of Judah programs.
The Holocaust is important to me because it's a horrific hardship my ancestors endured.
It's a reminder of what can happen if we allow our differences to divide us and lead with hate instead of kindness.
Seeing something so horrible and getting to learn about it firsthand from other survivors really has impacted me and the way that I think about the world, and I really want to make the world a better place.
It serves as a constant reminder of what the worst of mankind can look like. By studying and remembering the atrocities of the Holocaust, modern society can prevent such large-scale acts of evil from ever happening again.
A growing amount of people are claiming never happened and that's something wrong, and it's something that has to be remembered and recognized so that something like that never happens again.
As unfortunately the number of Holocaust survivors are slowly decreasing, it is my job and our generation's job to share their testimonies so nobody can ever say the Holocaust did not happen.
The Holocaust is important to me because it connects me to my Jewish heritage, and it's a source of pride that my ancestors were able to get through such a traumatic event and come out strong.
reflects how dangerous prejudice, discrimination, and tolerance are, whether in the context of anti-Semitism or any other kind of hate. To learn how to identify the signs that a group is being dehumanized or discriminated against, and prevent it by emphasizing the need for justice and the preservation of human rights.
It is something that is very big in our Jewish history, and by learning about it, we will never forget what happened, so it will never happen again.
Thanks to my grandfather, I have always been interested in this area, trying to understand why it happened and how can people be so cruel. Always wondering what became of the survivors, wanting to ask questions about how they felt, thinking I would never get the chance. But look at me now, being a part of something I never thought to be a part of. I am honored to be starting a club at my school so I can relate the stories I have heard directly from you.
It's important for generations like myself to learn from the Holocaust so that we can avoid the atrocities of the past and develop a bigger, brighter, more peaceful future moving forward. We are witnesses for all survivors. Their testimonies will live through us because we know that one day they will no longer be with us. We honor them and recall their rich and full lives before the Holocaust. Please watch this film, Life Before Wartime.
We were about 500 Jewish people. The majority, about 95%, were poor. The 5% were people who had little grocery stores or were working for the landowners or something like that. They made a little bit more money.
It was a joyously Jewish home. My parents both understood somehow to make Jewish observance exciting and joyous and beautiful.
I remember my mother was very, very careful in teaching us how to prepare the Shabbat.
In the morning we used to get up and go to Cheder from 6 to 7:30, then go to public school till 3 o'clock, and 3 o'clock to 7 back to the Cheder.
Anti-Semitism was something that was going on there constantly, but never openly. I was about 11 years old, and suddenly they taught the Christian kids to march past us, to spit at us, kick us, egg us on, throw stones at us. So it was very humiliating.
That short film says a lot about lives before the war. Tonight, we are privileged to hear from a survivor in our community who made it through the war. Our next speaker, Laszlo Szeli, was born in Hungary and lived there during the period of the Nazi occupation. This was a perilous period when friends and neighbors were forcibly removed from their homes each day to be shot by German soldiers. He and his family were saved by the Russian liberation of Hungary. He remained in his native homeland until the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, when he immigrated to the United States. We are honored to hear now from survivor Laszlo Szeli.
My name is Laszlo Szeli. I was born in Budapest, Hungary, but my name was not always Szeli. When I was born, my name was Schwarz. We lived on a beautiful tree-lined avenue in Budapest, and when the Nazis occupied Hungary, we had to move out of there into a designated Jewish house, a yellow star house. We could only carry what we could have in our two hands. The building where we had to move was very crowded, very dirty, and smelled awful. My parents had a friend at that time who was not Jewish and was a member of the Nazi party. She came to us one day and she offered to take my twin brother and me to live with her to see if she could save us from the deportations. We had no choice, we had to go with her. She had a little tobacco shop and she lived behind this shop in a dark, dingy room. The shop was separated from this room only by a curtain. We were given new names and we were warned never ever to tell our real name to anybody. She had a young woman working for her who became very suspicious and kept asking us for our name. One day she came to me with a piece of candy and she offered to give it to me if I tell her my real name. I wanted this candy real bad and I told her. This lady overheard that from behind the curtain and immediately took us back to our parents, to the designated Jewish house, and we had no choice because it was punishable by death to hide the Jew. By this time, my parents got a hold of some papers from Raoul Wallenberg, who took us over to one of his Swedish so-called protective houses. This house was very near the river Danube. The Soviets were already fighting on the outskirts of Budapest, and the Germans left, but the killing of the Jews in Budapest never stopped. It was taken over by the Hungarian Nazi party, the Arrow Cross. They herded the people out of these buildings, took them down to the river Danube and executed them. The building where we were was very close to this spot. Mercifully, we could not see this, but we could clearly hear it. We heard the cries and the screams of the people as they realized what was about to happen. We heard the orders being shouted, we heard the machine gun fire, and then we all listened to the silence and knew they were all dead. We also knew that sooner or later it will be our turn and they will come for us. And one day they did. They came to our building and told us that tomorrow morning we have to be all lined up in front. Anybody who stays behind will be shot on the spot, and we knew where we're going and why. And that was the worst night I ever had in my life. All the women were crying, hugging their children. The men were huddled together, praying, and we all hoped that morning will never come. But of course it did, because it always does. Very early that morning, we heard rifle butts banging on the front door, and the door had to be opened up, and there stood two Soviet soldiers looking for Nazis. The Soviet army took the street we lived on that night. Had there been only one day late, I would not be here today to tell you the story. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Selly, for sharing your remarkable story of survival and your moving testimony. Now, Sydney and I would like to present a candlelighting ceremony in sacred memory of the 6 million Jews murdered during the Holocaust. As we light the candles, we will hear the Kaddish, the traditional prayer of mourning, recited by 5 survivors of the Shoah and a second-generation survivor.
They are Magda Bader, who was born in Czechoslovakia, Hungary; Helen Chasit, daughter of Joe Sachs of blessed memory, who was born in Poland; Fred Molbauer, who was born in Czechoslovakia; David Mermelstein, who was born in Czechoslovakia; David Schachter, who was born in Slovakia; and Jack Waxel, who was born in Poland.
Yizgadal v'yizgadash shemei Rabbi v'yalmad yurach v'rutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chai echonu v'yoyim echonu v'chai d'chol beit Yisrael v'agalai u'zman kariv v'imru Amen.
Yehei shmei Rabba mevorach li'olam v'olmei u'maya.
Yispuach v'yishtabach v'yispuach v'yiswamam v'yisnaseh v'yisadol v'yisalei v'yisalol shmadi ketchu barichu
Ve'elom mikol rochot v'shirochot tishbuchot v'nechamoto namiron v'yolmo v'imru Amen.
Yehei shlomo Rabbo mishamayim v'chaim oleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru Amen.
Oseh shalom bimromav.
Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael Amen.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, המסי מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במלוא קדושים וטהורים, כי זוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמות הקדושים והטהורים, שהומתו ושנהרגו ונשחטו ונשרפו, ושנטבעו ושנחנקו על קידוש השם, על ידי הצורים הגרמנים, יימח שמם וזכרם, בעבור שכולנו מתפללים בעד הזכרת נשמותיהם, בגרדן תהיה מנוחתם, לכן בעל הרחמים יסרם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרו בצור חיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם, וינוח בשלום על משכבותיהם, ונאמר אמן.
It is my privilege to be part of the commemoration of Yom HaShoah this year in the community event. You know, some of you may know me as Rabbi Mario Roisman, the Rabbi of Bet Torah Ben Oro campus. But some of you may not know that I am the grandson of Beile Gittel Roisman, one of the 6 millions. And when I was asked to give some testimony for this year, this special year, about a message to our youngster regarding the Shoah, I want to tell you only one thing. You know, I was very proud of the Jewish people that we never created brigades of vengeance. We created big brigades of justice. And I will invite you now to create a third kind of brigade, and this is the brigades of the ones who tell the story. Why? Because unfortunately, the survivors are less and less because they're aging. But you have a role, and I have a role. And let me tell you why we need to tell the story. I just find out that there was a study released by the Conference of Jewish Material Claims Against Germany found that 31% of Americans and 41% of millennials think only 2 million Jews were killed in the Holocaust. 11% of US adults and 22% of millennials say they never heard about the Shoah or are not sure if the Jews committed the Holocaust or they died in the Holocaust. It's getting better. 40% of adults and 66% of millennials can't identify Auschwitz as a Nazi death camp. So I'm not afraid of the deniers of the Holocaust. I can deal with them. What I cannot deal is with you, a young Jew who will not tell the story. So you know what you need to do? Take your phone and call or text or WhatsApp one of your acquaintances and friends and tell them, today my people commemorate the killing of 6 million Jews. And I just want you to know that changed my nation forever. And it changed the expectation from human beings forever. And I want you to be part of those, not only who remember, but make sure that never again, not for Jews, not for anybody. Am Yisrael Chai. The Jewish people is alive. And the future of the Jewish people is in us telling the story.
Thank you, Rabbi Roisman, and my special thanks to Jessica Katz, chair of tonight's Yom HaShoah commemoration. And a thank you also to Wendy Reese Rothfield, chair emeritus, who has for many years served as chair of our Yom HaShoah community observance. And thank you to everyone out there for joining us this evening. We appreciate your participation in our Yom HaShoah commemoration and your support for the Holocaust Memorial Miami Beach. Please be sure to visit holocaustmemorialmiamibeach.org for upcoming programs and events. And may we be blessed to stand together once again at the Holocaust Memorial for next year's Yom HaShoah commemoration. We'll close our program this evening with Cantor Norman Cohen Fala of Temple Sinai of North Dade singing the Partisans Hymn, the powerful anthem of survival and determination that has inspired our survivors and our people for decades. Cantor?
Sot nit kein Mal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg, Hoch ihm im Leine verstellen bläue Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau, es wird erbeugt an unser Trott, mir seinen do. Kommen wird noch unser ausgebänkte Schau, Sveta poigt on unser Trott mir seinen Don. Von grünen Palmenland bis weißen Land von Schnee. Wir kommen on mit unser Pein, mit unser Weh. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt vor unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Gwure, unser Mut. Und wo gefallen sie, so spritzt vor unser Blut. Sprotzen wird dort unser Gwure, unser Mut. Wird die Morgenson begilden uns dem Feind. Und der Nächten wird verschwinden mit dem Feind. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne und dem Kajor. Wie a Parol soll gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Nur euch versammeln wird die Sonne und dem Kajor. Wie a Parol soll gehen das Lied von dort zu dort. Das Lied geschrieben ist mit Blut und nicht mit Blei. Es ist nicht kein Lied von a Vogel auf der Frei. Das hat a Fotze wischen fallen die gewähnt. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. Das hat a Fotze wischen fallen die gewähnt. Das Lied gesungen mit Naganes in die Hand. So sag nicht keinmal, als du gehst dem letzten Weg. Und ihm im Laien verstellen bloße Tag. Kommen wird noch unser ausgewählte Schau. Es wird abbeugt an unser Trott mir seinen Dor. Kommen wird noch unser ausgewählte Schau. Es wird abbeugt an unser Trott mir seinen Dor.